a comment as to the position that are in and will be in very deeply from next year on. That is, we may, if, with some luck, have a dam that flows water in 4 or 5 years, but in the meantime, from next year, 2018, the PC6 requires a 25% increase in minimum flows at Red Bridge, and there will be no dam to provide supplementary flows to meet that. If the water is required, then it's going to have to be taken off irrigators. So, as from next year, the likelihood of frequent and extensive irrigation bans will start to take effect. In the meantime, farm environmental management plans will start the journey of reducing nutrients, but that I suspect is a 20 to 50 year time frame. So you're going to have periphyton in the river next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, and severe stress on irrigators and severe stress on the Central Hawke's Bay economy for as long as it takes to get a dam in place. There is no choice in the matter. The only choices are, if the dam doesn't come along, then those irrigators are going to have to substantially change their land uses with the obvious impacts that they will have. So,
Chairman, how much time are you
allocating
allocating
I'm just
for a reply to this?
Settle down, Tom. Alan.
I just want to remind us that that's what
and because you're our elder statesman here in your kaumātua, I've let you go, but actually it was a little bit out of order, Alan, but we appreciate the comments. Thank you very much. Now look, guys, we're going to have to get back, and I made a bit of a I just want to say that we all understand that, actually. We all understand that there's a complexity here and a balance that we've got to find our way through. None of us don't get that, Alan. So I just want to go to item 2, conflict of interest, just quickly, because we didn't declare conflict of interest. I presume there is none, any new conflict of interest?
I was just going to say to you, I should do the register, but I've bought I've bought a residential property here in Napier, another one, so do I have to enter that in the register?
You just put that on the register, it's not a conflict. The Mayor of Napier has left the building. So there are no further comments. We don't have to move that, do we? So item 3, confirmation of our minutes. I think we should do that. I'm just going to take them as read, if I could find my minutes. Yeah.
You're starting 10th of May, Chief?
10th of May. I don't have those in front of me. 10th of May. The 26th of April and 10th of May. So I'm going to presume that both minutes. Let's go 10th of May. Is it, Tom? Was it 10th of May? 10th of May. That you have read them. Are there any additions to those minutes?
I do have a question about these. These are the minutes that are basically recording all of the presentations and counter presentations and what have you that were made. And so when it comes to a matter of accuracy, are we judging that all these things were said or that they were all accurate?
Both.
Well, you don't want to open that can of worms.
It's a record of the meeting, yeah, so it could be someone's view, I guess. Not deadly accurate.
I'll give you just one example.
Yeah, how about
just
that?
to see
what page?
On page 2, toward the bottom, there's a section that begins economic issues slides covered.
Economic upside from technology.
See where it says economic issues slides covered? Toward the bottom. On page 2, just above that, the last bullet ends with, with the only condition precedent not resolved being the investor financing. Well, as we've just discussed all morning, that is not the only condition precedent not resolved. None of them are resolved. So I would hate for somebody to read these minutes and conclude, oh, why are they still at this?
That's just not true. It's a statement.
Chair, if I may, so this is a true and accurate record of what was said in the
Said,
meeting,
right.
and the advice was, as per the paper you've received for today, that in July last year the council did resolve that 3 of the 4 conditions precedent had been satisfied at that point in time, subject to material changes. Now there are changes that are ongoing, and therefore some of those conditions precedent need to be reconfirmed. So we're starting to get into semantics here, but it is an accurate reflection of what was said during the meeting, as I understand it.
Any other comments to those minutes? So can we have someone to move to approve the minutes of Wednesday, the 10th of May? Not Tom. Alan and Peter Bevan. You okay? All those in favour? All right, we'll approve those minutes. Then this second lot of minutes were the minutes, yes. You okay with that, Tom? You okay? Oh, you voted no? Okay. Okay, we have the minutes of Wednesday the 26th, which was our last council meeting. I'll assume they're all read. For accuracy, are we okay for accuracy? Not necessarily truthfulness, but what was accurately said. We are. Do we have someone who will move that we accept those minutes of Wednesday 26th? Casting it. Tom. Thank you, Tom. Seconder, Paul. All those in favour? Aye. Against? We'll accept those minutes. Thank you very much, team. Item 4, follow-ups from the previous regional council meeting. James, you go help us through this.
Chair, there are 2 initiatives which have been requested, one in relation to the living wage and the other one in relation to an ethical investment policy. It's my intention to bring back advice on both of those to the council in the new financial year. The Corporate and Strategic Committee has made a recommendation in relation to membership of the Capital Structure Review, so we're dealing with that on the agenda today. The HBRC workshop has been initiated and is on the council agenda for the 21st of June, when we've got some workshop time on that. And then I think just in relation to the Hamilton North Water inquiry, we have a separate item on the agenda for today on that. So nothing more other than anything in the Lagoima that council may
Just a
have questions on.
Question, Chair, in regard to the HPUD's review. Did I hear you right? 21st of June, we're talking about it, or are we workshopping it with the other councils?
No, we're having a workshop ourselves.
Just with ourselves?
Just with ourselves. There hasn't been Napier City's already endorsed the revision,
Right.
and Hastings District are presently working through themselves, and they declined the invitation to do a joint workshop.
Was there any reasons why?
They want to get their own thing together.
They're worried about me being in the same room as Simon Hickson.
They want to get their own thing together, and they're also worried about Peter Bevan. Tom?
Yeah, just a question about the first item in the Lagoima request, the fresh meats prosecution. That seems pretty meaty, if I might say so. What's the issue? What's going on there?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Any Lagoima request doesn't have to give the reasons why they've sought the information. We've provided a summary of the actual specific information that's been sought, but can't answer your question.
But the words it says prosecution. Is there? Are we at these people, or what? Fresh Meats New Zealand prosecution is.
There may well have been a prosecution back in 2012, which I think is what they were seeking fairly historic information, but I'd have to confirm that.
Any other questions? Councillor Dick?
Mr. Chairman,
This is one for you to look
the
at.
Lagoima requests from Hawke's Bay Today and New Zealand Herald. Can someone advise me what the steps are or possible sanctions if the requests continue to be refused and the Ombudsman has a different view?
Chair, if I may, the Ombudsman's in town this weekend meeting with council staff and I believe some councillors as well, in which he will be able to provide his view of the answer to those questions. From my understanding, under the Act, there are modest fines that can be imposed on those not providing information to the Ombudsman themselves upon request. When the Ombudsman's undertaking his or her work to determine whether or not there have been reasonable grounds for withholding the information. But in terms of a sanction on not releasing the information to the requester, essentially the ultimate sanction is that the Ombudsman writes and issues a report which
Just speak up a bit.
the Ombudsman can write and issue a report of critique, but there is no formal sanction beyond that. That is my understanding. I don't know whether...
So did you say earlier on, I was having trouble hearing that, that someone possibly could be fined?
Yeah, the fines only relate, as I understand it, to not providing information to the Ombudsman and effectively obstructing the Ombudsman's ability to undertake an investigation. And I think those fines, off from memory, are around $200.
And who are they? Who's liable for those fines?
The person who has been requested to provide the information.
The council or the council or?
Would depend on where the request has gone to, but if the request is to the council, it will be the council itself. If it's in relation to councillors' own correspondence, one could imagine that if it's within the council's email system, it could presumably be the council, and if it's on the councillor's private email, it would be the councillor themselves.
Thank you. I have one. I'm rather interested in that correspondence from a solicitor re-allegations of form tampering. Is that for real?
My understanding of consent was that it was previously a consent for another purpose, and that the purpose of the consent was altered for water bottling. It was previously consented supply, but we'd need to come back with some advice on whether there's a substantive issue that councillors need to be aware of. So we'll provide that at the next opportunity.
It's probably a change of a consent rather than tampering of information.
Well, that's my understanding of what was requested. Whether or not there is an issue with respect to the application itself, we'll need to go away and provide you with that advice.
Okay. We don't have to move the previous... Okay, we accept the previous items. Move up, second up. All those in favour? All right. Thank you. We'll go to item 5. Any minor items? Oh, we do have one. Rockets, is it?
Well, it could be a second one. I hadn't thought of that. LGNZ Border Symposium.
Put it down. Any other?
Manawatu Gorge closure.
Manawatu Gorge. If there's no more, we will accept those minor items. So we will move now to item 7, which is recommendation. Oh no, so 10. We're going to go to corporate and strategic, so that anyone who's interested in that can go home afterwards. Thank you, Neil. Hand over to you.
Well, if you could indulge me a little in terms of moving these recommendations from the Corporate and Strategic Committee, Mr. Chair, I'm suggesting that we do move on page 21 the recommendations 1 and 2, a slight adjustment to recommendation 3, so that it reads, we delete at the end of the resolution to review the existing RWSS environmental package and substitute comply with the resolutions made in agenda item 21 of the Council Agenda 31 May 2017.
Very sensible. Maybe we should put that up. But,
Can we put that up?
But I think everyone gets that. Do they? That. Oh.
All right. So
let's get it up.
we
He's
get on-
essentially linking his report to the previous.
sure. Leanne, if you're able to bring
Okay.
up item 3 on the board.
For clarification, Chair, does that take out all the rest of the recommendations?
No, it doesn't. Just in reference to 3.
Okay, so the
And then we delete.
staff engaged, environmental, EDS, etc., that remains?
No.
No, over the page I'm talking about.
Yeah, all of that.
All that does,
Yes,
okay.
yeah,
All
it's,
that
it's a
remains, yeah.
modification to recommendation 3.
And 4.
Can you bring it up, Leanne, on screen, please?
I'm not sure.
Are you not able to bring it up? No?
I am, but I'm just not sure of which part. Sorry, I'll use my microphone. I'm not sure which of the recommendations you're wanting me to bring forward.
So it's item 10, recommendations of the Corporate and Strategic Committee.
So it's number 3.
Recommendation 3.
Recommendation 3.
No, look, because of our item 21,
He wants
they've
to link
superseded this.
Resolutions made in agenda items.
Yeah, they will, but what this is attempting to do is to shortcut all of that. So if Leanne can bring it up on screen, you'll see what I'm talking about.
So it's that one there,
Just put it on the screen.
with resolutions made.
In agenda item 21 of the Council Agenda 31 May. Is it possible to put it up?
Right.
So, Mr. Chair, it's simply because we've superseded that recommendation and the next two, I'm suggesting that we simply delete from the existing tabled recommendation 3, delete the words review the existing RWSS environmental management package, which is not what we resolved in item 21, and substitute comply with the resolutions made in agenda item 21 of the Council Agenda 31st of May 2000. Is it?
Yeah.
Do people get that?
I get that.
And I'm suggesting we simply don't consider recommendations. We don't make recommendations 4, and we don't make recommendation 5. We simply go to recommendation 6, 7 and 8, 9 and 10.
Take that one out as well.
We'll just leave it there because it's okay to leave there. We won't recommend it.
So,
That's right. If this is just a recommendation.
Chair, in relation to recommendation 5, just to be absolutely clear, that councillors all understand that the new environmental condition precedent for investment in the RWSS, as agreed in agenda item 21, will pick up, I guess, the whole of catchment consideration, and therefore number 5 is no longer required. But effectively, the intent in there.
As seen in.
Yeah, so
That's
just
how I read it.
Yeah, just make sure the councillors are all on the same page on that.
It's not intended that HBRC take responsibility for the rest of the region?
No, councillor. So essentially what we've done is we've put together two recommendations into one package of work. The Corporate and Strategic Committee's recommendations were for council staff to report back on Plan Change 6 implementation in parallel with HBRC reporting back on their compliance with their consent conditions. So we're bringing it together essentially as a package in one. And that was implicit in the last item.
How big an item of work do you believe this is, the new environmental CP in particular?
Look, it's not a small undertaking, but it's an undertaking we have to do in effect anyway, which is part of the implementation planning for Plan Change 6. That's a part of preparation for the long-term plan work. We have outstanding report backs to council anyway in relation to Plan Change 6 implementation. So, in essence, there's a body of work that council staff will be doing. This modifies it slightly to work in a bit more closely with HBRC. Around their consent conditions, but the bulk of this work would be required anyway. So it is built into current work programs.
The HBRC consent conditions and Plan Change 6 conditions are there. They're in concrete. We can't change them without plan change. So is it not a matter of simply tabulating those and assembling them into a form that makes it clear how they will influence outcomes?
So, councillor, my understanding of what's been asked of council staff here is that we provide some confidence that the plan can be implemented, and that's effectively what has been asked in the previous item under item 21, and the advice we'll provide back to you is essentially how that will be done. Obviously at a relatively high level. We won't be going into every last property and every last action and every last farm environment plan, and so we're going to have to exercise some judgment around what is necessary to provide that comfort, and I think that goes partly to the comments that were made previously about the discretion that staff will need to exercise in providing that to you, and it may be iterative. It may be that we provide you with some advice and there are some further questions.
Whilst we seem to be relitigating the discussion over agenda item number 21, and specifically the environmental condition about the council being satisfied, I think that word satisfied is quite important. To my mind, that means that any advice that's brought back to us is actually peer reviewed by someone who we are comfortable with, who has the ability to do that in a manner that we're satisfied with. And I'd just like to point that out to staff, that I would expect something along those lines to happen as part of that discussion.
Mr. Chair, if I can bring us back on track to recommendation, I'd like to move, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move recommendations 1, 2, 3, 6 and 7, taking into account those adjustments to 3 that I've put on the board. Yes, so I'm moving that council adopt the recommendations 1, 2, 3, 6 and 7.
Just a quick point of order there, Chair. Mr. Palmer had recommended that the words on 7th of June 2017 be taken out of clause or recommendation number 6.
So, Chair, I'm just confirming that, and out of number 7 as well. So if we just deleted the on 7 June, that gives us just a little bit of flexibility about when we report back. Look, the intention is to try and get that back to council by the end of June. But given that these are relatively significant pieces of work,
I think that's fine.
It may take another month or so. So we just dropped the date.
Can we deal with that?
Recommendation 1, 2, 3 and 6 then. Is there a seconder for that? No, Mr. Chair, just to foreshadow that the idea is to get through this as rapidly as we can, thus leaving out the more contentious ones or ones requiring greater thought than those particular ones.
number 7.
I'll second.
Do you wish to speak, Tom, to 7?
I know this is, we covered this ground when we initially adopted this request. The only question I have is in our letter from HBRC, there was a comment about, yes, in fact, they accepted the invitation to participate, but had a timing issue. Blair, could you elaborate on what the timing? So I'm on page, I moved 7 on page 22.
That man, Chair.
The initial timing that we understood was it needed to be presented by the 7th of June. So I think you've just modified that, so that resolves that. My understanding of the timing now is 21st of June or something to that effect. So that would provide sufficient time for us to participate. If it was to be resolved this week, our Prime Council involved in this process are involved in other activities, and I'm going to be away also. So we just wanted to make sure that the CEO and our advisors are available to participate, because we do have a desire to be part of the process.
And so has that been communicated to the other parties?
Yes, it had.
So everybody's happy with
We
that?
had a conference call last night, and the 21 June is so that we can submit a paper for the council meeting on the 28th of June.
Cool, great, thank you.
James had your back, didn't he?
He's a good man.
Hey, Tom, okay, you.
Yeah, I need a seconder though.
Tom's moved. Neil has seconded, yeah.
Okay,
Neil,
that's
we have a
fine.
mover and seconder for item 7. Do we have any other speakers?
And as we noted, it was deleting the on 7 June
Yeah.
at the very end
Yeah,
there. Yep,
we note that.
cool, all right.
Any other speakers? I thought that we would. Okay, no other speakers? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Against? She doesn't want to. Do you want division? No, she doesn't. She just voted against it. Okay. It's carried.
Sorry.
No, off you go.
Mr Chair, I suggest we skip over, the number 8 is redundant, and therefore I'd like to move recommendation 9, that we confirm the appointment of Mr David Shand and Mr Jim Scotland as independent members of the Capital Structure Review Advisory Committee.
I'll second that. Okay, speakers, do you wish to speak to that?
Well, Mr Chair, yes, Mr Chair, what I think we've done is got two very substantially qualified and experienced persons as independent people to be a part of that advisory group, the Capital Structure panel. Obviously, David Shand carries with him a huge level of international experience that we can well leverage for our purposes in Hawke's Bay, and ditto with the huge experience of Jim Scotland. I think we've got a really robust opportunity for that committee to undertake its deliberations. I'm now recognising we need to get our skates on with some urgency and perhaps come back to council with a work plan for that panel to commence. I would suggest that we in fact circulate that work plan so that all councillors can see in advance a draft copy of the program to make sure the issues you as councillors may require to see just covered. So that's probably the preliminary step to be made. And obviously we're needing to feed into the long-term plan, as Mr Palmer highlighted earlier in the day, so we need to get on with that quick smart. I do, and Councillor Dick may wish to move a further resolution in terms of further composition. I understand we've got that recommendation as well to consider, but I'm very happy to proceed with those two appointments to the panel.
That resolution is on item 6.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, is that from
Capital
the-
review, scope and process.
Oh, the separate, yes. Sorry, I've been, got ahead of myself somewhat, but, but that's the recommendation. of
Item
the-
6?
Nine, is it?
Okay, it's there.
Yes, you're correct, yes.
Sorry.
As the seconder, I would just like to endorse the comments on Shand and Scotland, both incredibly experienced, smart and capable people that will bring a huge addition to the other people who are on that board review committee. So are there any other further speakers on this? Otherwise, I'd like to move. All those in favour? Aye. Against?
Mr Chair,
Passed.
I wonder whether I could ask, sorry, I interrupt you again. I wonder whether I could ask for advice from the Secretary as to the status of 10.1, given that was a resolution of Council as opposed to a report received. Can you advise how we carry that report received into a resolution of Council?
Sorry, we're just noting that it was resolved as a decision of council at that meeting.
So essentially it's internalised to the Corporate and Strategic Committee, so we only need to move the adoption of the reports under 10.1 to 10.4 to in fact validate the appointment of the Chief Executive. I don't want him to find that he's not the bona fide Chief Executive. That's what. So that's the status of. Well,
Following
therefore,
reports. Have you got any comment on those?
no,
on,
I just moved
on
the
the following
adoption
reports?
of those reports.
We have a seconder? Yes, certainly.
With regard to 10.3, I'm wondering, James, if you can come back to us on either the workshop on the 21st of June or earlier if possible with a policy around social media that exists within council, because I'd like us as councillors to explore that post haste.
Noted. So we just are receiving the reports 1, 2, 3 and 4, around 10. All those in favour? Against? It's for lunch, guys. That's the clock, Peter.
Thank you, Chair.
That's Wairoa time.